He wouldn't do Lawrence of Arabia. He wouldn't do On the Waterfront. He did a certain kind of film, a genre of these kind of dark, ironic films. He knew what he did, and he did it endlessly, and he did it at the commercial center of filmmaking.
Today, we are visited by the incredibly talented Laurence Leamer, a prolific author whose literary journey spans 18 captivating books, including 5 that have graced the prestigious New York Times bestseller list. Laurence has a remarkable gift for weaving together history, politics, and of course the glitz, glamour, and dark side of Hollywood. Today, we will be discussing his latest book, Hitchcock's Blondes, the unforgettable women behind the legendary director's dark obsession. I'm honored to introduce today's guest, Laurence Leamer. Larry, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, John.
I've been reading your book here, and it's just wonderful. Really enjoyed it. How did you pick this subject?
Well, you go to Prime Video and plug in Hitchcock's name. Over 40 of his films are you can enjoy even today. Okay, he was the greatest director of the 20th century, and so much of that greatness had to do with these actresses, these blonde actresses that he was obsessed with. So I thought it was a natural subject for a book.
Fantastic. Reading your book, I realized that I don't know anything about Hitchcock. I thought I knew a little, but I didn't know much. It really just filled in the background with so much detail. What part of this book did you find the most challenging to write out of all these stories?
I guess it was just realizing and developing the appreciation for this man. He wouldn't do Lawrence of Arabia. He wouldn't do On the Waterfront. He did a certain kind of film, a genre of these kind of dark, ironic films. He knew what he did, and he did it endlessly, and he did it at the commercial center of filmmaking. Early on in the 20s, he went into the early movie theaters, and he saw the theaters were full of women, and he knew he had to have movies that would please women, and that's what he made.
Okay, all right, fantastic. How would you describe the ideal reader for your book? Who is this really targeted at? People that know a lot about film, know very little, both?
I guess both. I mean, I just are interested, not just about Hitchcock, but about human character. These women are just fascinating. I didn't realize the extent when I got into it. But even if you're not interested in film, you might be interested in these women.
I was just struck with the Ingrid Bergman. Just her life is so, and you hit it very well in the book, how her life is so different than what we see on the screen.
Yeah, and I knew her ex-husband, Peter Lindstam, her first husband, was a good friend of mine. And
wow.
I wrote a book about Ingrid Bergman. And Peter would come over to our house about once a week. And he always insisted my wife would sit there because I would not agree with something he would say. And he'd get angry. My wife would say, Ingrid loves you more than anybody else. And that was okay. He was remarried. He married a doctor. He had 3 children, wonderful children, a great life. And yet in retirement, he'd go down in the basement and watch Ingrid Bergman's films. That's how obsessed with her he was.
Okay. She's such a special actress. I know in one part in Casablanca where she turns and she's wearing a hat and the light hits her out of the dark. It's just, it's the most beautiful image I've ever seen in a film. And it's not a Hitchcock film, but it's just,
no, and remember, she's half German. And she was a star in UFA in Berlin before the war. If there'd been there's a problem with the money, or she would have been making a film in Berlin in the summer of 1939, and she wouldn't have come to the States to make Casablanca, I don't think.
Right. You said, yeah, you mentioned that when she would have been there when the invasion of Poland took place.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, this is kind of just an opinion question, obligatory. Of all these incredible actresses, who do you feel is the greatest?
Wow, the greatest.
You can define greatest however you want.
The one that I think had the potential for greatness was Grace Kelly. Have you seen The Country Girl?
I have not. I've seen Rear Window.
Nominated for Academy. She was fantastic at that. If she hadn't run off and married Rainier, Prince Rainier, a man she didn't really love, she would have been one of the greatest actresses of our time, I think.
Really? Oh, that's very interesting.
A whole range of things. I mean, her beauty limited her in some ways because people wanted to just portray her as this beautiful woman. But as she got older, she would have done all kinds of parts.
That's interesting. I thought, because when I watched Rear Window, I thought, well, she's just too beautiful to be with Jimmy Stewart. You know, he's
Right.
a photographer, and she just, I could see where her beauty would really affect her like that.
Yeah, well, that's true of Hollywood. You can be an older guy. You could be Humphrey Bogart, not terribly attractive and old, but you have a young woman, right? We don't have an older woman with a young man very often in films.
Right. Okay. I was especially the first two chapters. How do you feel Hitchcock's legacy as a director is diminished by the harsh tactics he used during filming? I know that you mentioned Me Too in here, and I think he would have been destroyed nowadays.
Yeah, but you know what I think? People say that. It's like Abraham Lincoln wanted to send the slaves to send them back to Africa. Okay, that was his. He grew up out of that feeling, but that was that era, and JFK and all JFK women. I mean, he would have acted a different way, and Hitchcock too. In our world, you've got to act a different way. You may feel like doing these disgusting things, but if you get caught, it's all over.
Right. And so I guess more like he should be judged as a character of his time and not as we see things now.
Yeah, or he can destroy everybody. He can pull down every statue.
Right. Okay. Makes perfect sense to me, and I agree with you. And what do you think Hitchcock focused so much malice on Tippi Hedren with the
I don't
birds
know if
thing
he
in the
focused
morning?
malice on her, but look, he's watching the Today Show one morning, and he sees her doing an ad. She was a top model in New York, and he brings her here without any experience, and she thought she was going to maybe be in some of these Hitchcock Presents TV things, but she never imagined her first thing would be to be starring the Birds. So he had to work with her very hard, and I wouldn't say he was cruel, but he was, he just pushed her, and he was obsessed with her, dangerously obsessed with her.
And so you like the strapping the birds to her head and everything was necessary to get the correct shots or that he wanted?
You know what? Look, he could have done that in one shot in a half hour. Okay, that's what most directors would have done. He did it. He put these birds around her for 5 straight days, and
Right.
the last day he tied these birds onto her arms like that could have poked her eyes out. Was it because he hated her and wanted to do terrible things to her? No, he was a perfectionist, and he wanted to get these great shots. And like it or not, The Birds is a terrific movie.
Oh, I love that movie. So he's just he's after his vision then, I guess.
Yeah.
What it takes to get his vision if you have to go up the stairs for 4 hours in a row or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
He just used actors. Look, he had a limited appreciation of actors. He just plugged them in. He thought there was, in some ways, kind of interchangeable.
Yeah, that was kind of a common thing.
And they weren't the essence of the film. He began as a sound filmmaker, and he still was a silent filmmaker in some ways, with a little dialogue added. That's what the picture was everything with him.
And that John Ford and some of the other big directors were pretty down on their actors too. So that was very common, right? Back in the day. Okay. All right. Well, I know there's so many, 40 great Hitchcock films. Do you have one that you like more than the others? I won't say your favorite, but
I think Marney with Kim Novak is kind of underappreciated. So I think that's a very interesting film.
Marney, okay. Yeah, that's some deep frigidity and rape and some serious topics in that movie. I love Notorious, which of course has Ingrid Bergman, Claude Rains, and Cary Grant, and then his vision for like North by Northwest, and how do you feel that what movie shows the best of Alfred Hitchcock?
Wow. Well, the greatness of Alfred Hitchcock is there's no one movie that shows the best of him. You can go back to the Lodger, his 1927 wonderful sound film that shows the best of him, and then later on Marney shows the best of him. I mean, 30 years, 40 years later, that's how great this man was and underappreciated. When Francois Truffaut in the mid '60s came to and spent a week with Hitchcock in L.A., Truffaut only spoke a little English. He had an interpreter, and he did this long, the 5-day interview where they talked about all the intimacies of making a film. And that became this movie which anybody that wants to become a director or is serious about filmmaking has read that book. It's that great. There's so much to learn in that book. And there's so much to learn from Hitchcock.
Okay. I read somewhere else that when, I guess it was for the lodger, and he had the stairway built so they couldn't shoot it from another direction. They could only shoot it from one view. And
on the lodger, he has this shot. It's an upstairs, and he has glass for the floor. I mean, he just was constantly thinking about all these innovative shots.
Okay. And I also read, I'm not sure where I read it, but they tried to call Hitchcock an American director because he came up in an American studio in England. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well,
as far as the methods,
I think of him. I mean, you got American. I think of him as an American director, great American director. I mean, we're a country of immigrants, so he's as American as you and I are.
Yes, very good. All right. What have I forgotten to ask you in this little short time? What would you like to say about Hitchcock or the book that I didn't touch on as a subject?
Look, the only kind of immortality that we can be certain of is human memory. And in that way, Hitchcock is immortal. As we're speaking right now, there are people all over the world watching his films.
Oh, fantastic. I just did a Charlie Chaplin book, and it was when they brought him back.
Scott Hyman?
Yes.
He's my buddy.
Oh, yeah, great. It was a good book, too. You guys are doing some fantastic work. When he came back and they gave him the Lifetime Achievement Award, and he was kind of honored. He was honored. And that's kind of the same when Hitchcock got his award at the end when Ingrid Bergman did the presentation. I mean, does that, when your peer group embraces you like that, is that vindication of your methods or your ways and your...
Well, it was too late. He was old and he was out of it. And when I write a book, I in my head write the last chapter first, and then I write the rest of the book to justify that last chapter. And in Hitchcock's Blondes, it's the 1979 AFI tribute to Hitchcock. He's kind of depressed out of it, and his wife is there. She's had strokes, and someone they bring her and prop her up. And Ingrid Bergman is the master of ceremonies that evening. And all these people come forward and they show these film clips, and he just looks down at his plate. There's no emotion, nothing at all. And at the end of the evening, Ingrid says, one last thing I want to do. When we were making Notorious, we had the famous key for the wine cellar. Right. And Cary Grant took that key. And he kept it for 10 years, and it gave him lots of good luck. And for 10 years, he gave it to me, and I kept it for 10 years, and it gave me lots of good luck. And now, Hitch, I'm coming down and giving the key to you. And he walked down into the theater. At this point, everybody stood up and applauded. She walked through the auditorium, table by table, and Hitchcock was standing up to it. And she embraced him. She hugged him. And he didn't like to be hugged, but clearly he liked it this evening. And she hugged him back. And he wasn't just embracing her. He was alive again. He was embracing life itself.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's an amazing story. And then also tying it back to that shot when she has the key in her hand and Claude Rains is coming and she has to get rid of it. That is just one of the most thrilling shots in cinema, I believe.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so to tie it in at the end with that key is just fantastic. Can I ask you, where can people find you on social media? Where do you want to direct people to get
my website, which is leamer.com, and send me an email that way.
Okay. Well, like I said, this book is fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And it's going to be a good reference going forward. I congratulate you on a fantastic job. And thank you for coming today. But thank you very much.
Okay, John, you were great. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Good luck.
Bye.
Bye-bye.